Hey guys, welcome to our discussion of Hannibal here on What the Flick, Season 2, Episode 5, called
Mukozuke,
which is
a seasonal sliced sashimi dish. Yeah. I think I know what this one means.
Yeah,
I think I might get the relevance to this week's episode.
Yeah, now you just showed me a picture of an artist that I did not know that is very clearly what they were going for with Poor Beverly Cats.
Yes, Poor Beverly. Damien Hirst, the British conceptual artist, well known for, he's the diamond encrusted skull guy. He, had a pharmacy that went around from museum to museum. But one of his more famous pieces is the Sliced Cow, where he sliced a cow, and each slice was sort of preserved in its own separate kind of formaldehyde tank that was, clear on all sides. And that's kind of the setup we get with Beverly, which the reveal of that was one of the more moments of this show, for sure.
So what's interesting to me is that, and you showed me, I didn't, as I said, I didn't know Damien Hirst. You showed me that the picture of that piece of art, and it's very clearly what they were going for. The presentation is almost identical, except it's an Asian woman instead of a cow. Yeah. So I'm curious why the show doesn't acknowledge that. Like why they don't. Why that's not a thing? Why it's just something that's like, a little salute to fans of Damien Hirst?
I think it's one of those things where they kind of figure either you get it, and so you know the reference, and then if you don't,
it's okay.
Google it. Yeah.
Google it, or it's still a
it's a cool thing on its own, whether or not it's referencing anything.
Yeah. So.
And they sort of make it thematically work, where he talks about how he separates her into layers the way that the way a coroner would, where they separate the body into layers,
So you really have to. I've now decided to fully enjoy Hannibal. That it is a fantasy world of not the good kind of fantasy world, but it is a world where there's nothing realistic happening here. Nothing even because I struggled with it in the beginning because much of it seemed to be where they would sort of the behavioral sciences aspect of it, and it seemed to it delves deeply into the inner workings of psychiatry and of forensic investigation.
And gourmet cooking.
But really nothing, and so I don't really then mean this as a point of criticism, because I'm going to give up on this at this point. But like when Crawford and Alana Bloom, is that her name?
Yes.
When they get the call that they've successfully found Hannibal toward the end, when he's been put in harm's way,
right,
where the show was almost done, right? They're like, he doesn't even say it with any urgency. It's like, we've tracked his cell phone. And then it turns out, then not only they track cell phone, but they're the first to arrive.
With no backup.
Backup. And presumably they weren't around the corner from the club. Like there are no other FBI agents. That was it. No one else could handle this critical thing that someone. And so and then if you take Hannibal being able to carve up Beverly, I guess he's got the area downstairs where he can do it. But this presentation. This would take some time. Like people would vanish for hours, if not days or weeks, to make these presentations. And then, of course, when Hannibal's swimming at the pool and the guy comes in, nobody else is using the pool. There's no other members of the club. I don't know.
You have to sort of take for granted a certain level of kind of horror movie logic of yes, you can't. There's no cell phone coverage, or there's no other people, or there's no.
And there's a lot of that. So in fact, there's so much of it that I think you can't. Stop thinking about it.
I pretty much I think at some point in season 1 I was like, okay, this is going to be this, so we're not even going to apply those kind of rules. They're in its own. We're not going to ask why there's no primary colors on anything or anyone ever.
But on all these other shows that we've done, all of them from there may be moments where we find they've left the realm of believability, but whether it's The Americans or Homeland or Breaking Bad or even Downton Abbey, they're grounded in some degree.
Right, but I think they kind of let you know what their rules are. Even with Downton Abbey, I think there's a there's a certain the mores of the era, and the societal etiquette or whatever becomes that's the context in which all this is taking place. And I think Hannibal pretty early on contextualizes itself as being this thing that is this thing, you know. It like I said, I've said this before, this is as art directed as Pushing Daisies was, but in the totally opposite direction. And in the same way that Pushing Daisies existed in its own sort of bubble of a certain kind of cuckoo logic, this show does as well, but in a much grimmer way.
So what do we think of, I guess, really this seminal moment, I think, of the season of Will being framed for this, and then now actually commission someone to commit a murder? I mean, he would be found, you know, if that had been taped and evidence were presented to a jury, I think you would find him in a Charles Manson-like way guilty of attempted murder.
You know, I think obviously at this point, Will clearly thinks that there's no way to prove his innocence, that there's no way, because really, I mean, the Hannibal is his only alibi, you know, and he's obviously given up on breaking Hannibal's story, or else he would, you know, because he'd want him alive otherwise. So
and he's just seen what happens if he tries to use his friends to do it.
Right, exactly. Yeah, Beverly got too close. He knew what Beverly was doing. Look what happened to her. And I think he's so upset about what happened to Beverly. It's like, all right, well now now you're not just fucking with me. You're going after my friend. So you got to be eliminated.
Right. This must be stopped. Yeah, it's a reasonable decision if you take out the fact. And again, this goes to taking the show, not taking sort of, again, removing yourself from the day-to-day machinations of how these people...
Accepting its internal logic.
Accepting its internal logic is that you would say to him, when you release the prison guard on Hannibal, like, you have to understand this guy's a crazed killer, and if it meant killing 9 innocent people to kill Hannibal, I presume the prison guard would do that. Right. So in that sense, you're risking innocence to achieve your end, which is not presented, which we don't. And I think we have to pretend like that couldn't happen, because of course no one else would be at the pool.
Right, but you know, clearly if this guy could stage that bailiff murder, you know, I think clearly he could figure out a way to get Hannibal alone.
But he didn't. So he didn't kill the judge, though.
He didn't kill the judge. He did the bailiff. So yeah, so then Hannibal was picking up on the copycat and doing more copycatting,
or just expressing Hannibal's outrage his own outrage at the judge for not doing what.
For not accepting the alibi. Yeah, no. I mean, it's, you know, for as many answers as questions as they answer, they open up new ones. So yeah, we have to sort of find out where Hannibal's head was and all of that. It was interesting. There's a thing that happens on TV shows and movies where when there's a seemingly minor character played by an actor you recognize, you know they're going to be important later. And the second Jonathan Tucker shows up as the prison guy, I was like, he's going to matter, you know.
He's going to matter.
So interesting that we find out that he actually killed the bailiff and didn't kill the judge. That opens up some new interesting areas for us here.
Also, we don't at this point know now how it's going to go, because Dr. Bloom knows what Will did, and we don't even know if
he's dead.
If he's dead, right?
Yeah,
he's been shot, but he was well enough at least to kick out the stool.
Right.
Anyway,
the bucket.
The bucket. Yeah. He kicked the bucket, but we don't know if he's kicked the bucket.
Eddie Izzard returns.
He's great.
He's so good on this.
What is he not good at?
Yeah,
like, have we encountered the thing that Eddie Izzard doesn't do well?
Yeah, no. He's amazing on this, and I really like how. This opportunity to get to know Dr. Chillton better, because he's such an interesting character, because he's so repellent for the most part, but at the same time he's so nakedly needy of fame. Like when somebody mentions, you know, that he could finally get the right Chesapeake Ripper, like he just gets this momentary glint in his eye, like, oh, I could. You know?
And his admission there that he was, what did he say exactly when because he had thought, of course, that Abel Gideon, that Eddie Izzard was the Chesapeake Ripper, and he was like, yes, I was wrong about that. I was mistaken about that. And that's an interesting, because I'm constantly struck by how the characters are different from the book and from Silence of the Lambs, where Dr. Chillton was only repugnant and oily. And there are here, this Dr. Chillton, Raul Esperanza, is that who plays him?
Raul Esparza, yeah.
Esparza, yeah. Is so, like, you know, these last couple episodes, for the first time, these little ounces of humanity. And I don't trust them. We're probably not supposed to, but the main reason I don't trust them is because of the Dr. Chilton from Silence of the Lambs.
Well, but again, I think when you have a character that's in 6 scenes of a feature film versus a character who's recurring on a weekly drama, you kind of have to give him a few more layers, to play. Like, he couldn't be that concentratedly oily all the time, if you're going to keep bringing him back week after week. I think we have to.
Well, I mean, I think I think many shows are willing to do that. I'm glad in this case that they're not. The last we see of Dr. Chilton, of course, in Silence of the Lambs, is
he's about to be
scurrying away through, I guess they're in Bermuda, is that right?
Something like, somewhere in the tropics.
And Hannibal says,
I bet to have a friend for dinner.
Bet to have a friend for lunch. I think it's lunch.
Lunch, maybe right.
Yeah. And then Jodie Foster says into the phone, just repeatedly, Dr. Lecter, Dr. Lecter, Dr. Lecter, which is, and this will always make whoever you're with laugh, anytime you get a phone call and there's no one there. That's what I say. Dr. Lecter, Dr. Lecter, Dr. Lecter, Dr. Lecter. It's worked for 10 years. Yeah. Well, feel free.
The classics never die.
Yeah, that's right.
And actually, I just saw Silence of the Lambs is now streaming on Netflix, so I might need to take a look at it again. It's been a while since I've seen it.
It's very good.
No, definitely.
It's got, as far as standard movie scenes of the misdirection of the house they're going in, and you think they're going to one.
Yeah.
That's a particularly good one.
And that was, I think that was kind of an innovator in that one.
Yeah,
I think it's been copied a lot since then.
It's very good.
So what else is happening? So of course, Crawford's wife is still in the hospital, and there was discussion about what was Hannibal thinking, and a lot of commenters mentioned that there's the coin flip in last week's episode, and that it was sort of a random decision on his part to let her live.
I didn't see that, but I did.
Which is an interpretation. But again, and I think he's still sort of keeping it vague. On the one hand, he cites his sort of his Hippocratic oath and his medical training, which obviously hasn't gotten in his way of killing however many people at this point. But also, he's ingratiating himself to Jack, and like they're friends now.
But I think that is so clearly the main thing, because first of all, as we learned from almost the first scene of this season, right? That there's the bloody, it looks like it's going to be fatal conflict between Crawford and Hannibal. We don't know, but that it's not random then that many of these episodes now are spent showing us their bond, that friendship, sort of making that final, whenever Crawford figures it out.
Right.
And that there's an obvious huge benefit to Hannibal to ingratiate himself to Crawford and Crawford's team. That's how he learned about Beverly. That's how he is able to be there and get all this information that will maybe allow him to pick people off one by one if they start to get too close or figure it out. But I mean, so we actually had a scene here where Hannibal says to Crawford, perhaps I'm a better friend than a doctor. He goes, you're as good a friend, and Crawford says, you're as good a friend as there is, or whatever it is. And then at the end, it's a bleeding, dying Hannibal being carried, draped over his new best buddy's shoulders.
True. Yeah. Now, what do we think of Hannibal's, strategy is in taking Beverly's liver or kidney?
It was kidney.
And replacing it with the mural guy.
Oh, I didn't even get that. I didn't even.
Yeah, when they did the autopsy on Beverly, they say
that's right.
Yeah,
because then it gives the incredible. This was
he gets to make the kidney pie. I know, but I mean, but why put in the mural guy to connect those two crimes?
I guess to show off, to let them know that they're looking for the same guy, and also to give us the incredibly rarely on this show dumb television line of, if we find Beverly's kidneys, we find her killer. I'm like, yeah, we got that. Yes, no shit.
Our friend Robert Abele, who was doing several shows with us, always had a joke when in the post-CSI wave of all those shows about forensic guys, he goes, I'm so sick of seeing shows where people go, this is your killer.
Yeah, well, that's what that was. Like, I just felt like it would be such a great show, or whatever we get to the show where the other people would be like, yeah, that's right, Bob.
Thanks.
But here's the thing:
I work
we're
here too.
Probably not going to. I work here too. It's great. Yeah, I don't think we're going to find her kidneys. I think that's the problem. Also, in this case, they don't give me the line of, unless he's eaten them. Like, ooh, yeah.
Interesting choice this episode. If you noticed that. Will gets let out of his cage
Yeah.
by Jonathan Tucker, and then also we see him getting gussied up in all the, the straitjacket and the mask and everything, but then we see Crawford removing it all. So given that he's spent most of this season behind bars or chained to a table or something, it's been interesting to sort of see them like beyond just the sort of fly fishing in his mind moments. These are the
Letting him move a little bit.
It's sort of like clearly as the further this goes along, the more idea there is like maybe you're not actually the lunatic we think you are, although obviously to be let out of the straitjacket means you have to be put in the straitjacket in the first place. So.
Right, but interesting also that Jonathan Tucker, the guard, had no weapon, totally trusted him. I mean, he eventually tied his hands, handcuffed him again. But Jack did, while letting him out, Jack did hold the gun to his face. Jack did have a gun there. So the law still doesn't trust him, but the murderers of the world, they're fully embracing.
They have a bond.
They have a bond. Yeah. All right. Well, anyway, I'm into it, and I'm prepared to take a deep breath and just relax about all the shit that doesn't make any
let it go.
sense.
Trust this show. I think it'll take us to cool places.
Let it go. Trust the show. All right. Thanks, everybody.